So with the recent news of the Disney Plus Percy Jackson TV series, I felt like it was time to revisit those movies that were made by Fox. And part of me didn't even want to do this, but I have such a long, loving history with Uncle Rick and his books that I honestly just had to look at these movies again before I saw the TV series. Yes, the two Percy Jackson movie adaptations that came out between the years of 2010 and 2013. The movies that Rick Riordan said himself he would never watch and was never going to watch. I am of course talking about Percy Jackson and the Olympians: The Lightning Thief and its standalone sequel, Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters. Now, I think anybody who's a Percy Jackson fan knows that these movies suck, but I remember when I first saw the trailers for The Lightning Thief and the Sea of Monsters, I was hyped. I would watch the trailers over and over again anticipating their releases, and I think I kind of tricked myself into liking these movies. But then again, I was only a preteen, I was in the middle of reading multiple books by Rick Riordan, and I had Percy Jackson fever. I think if anything was made during this time and it had Percy Jackson in it, I was going to watch it regardless. But when I looked back on these movies and really started analyzing them for what they were, I started picking up on a few things that I missed as a kid. So 10 years after I became a Percy Jackson fan, do I still like these movies? No, you can pay me to still like these movies. So we're gonna go into these movies and we're gonna look at why they don't work and what I don't like. So with that, let's start off with the first movie. Let's start with
Percy Jackson and the Olympians: The Lightning Thief.
Now, I know I said before that the whole point of this video was to revisit these movies and kind of laugh at them, but even when I was trying to do that, I was finding it really hard to enjoy myself. See, Rick Riordan has a bit of a formula when it comes to his books. They are books of kids going on adventures, encountering various mythological creatures and places, and they're very much made for kids. They are lighthearted, charming, and fun stories. But I only say that because in comparison, the tone of this first movie adaptation is completely miserable. There is almost no charm at all, the humor is completely inappropriate, if not completely devoid. And half the time, I'm wondering if the filmmakers even remembered that this was supposed to be a movie for children. Watching these movies back, I swear, it's like I'm a teacher and I just got handed a report from that one kid who didn't bother reading the book and just checked some online notes to get a very rough outline of what the story was. Now, first things first, it's probably worth mentioning that this movie was directed by Christopher Columbus. No, not that guy, this guy. Yeah, this is the guy who directed Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, another premiere movie in a children's series. Maybe this guy has an idea of how to set the tone for the future of this series. So did he do that successfully? Well, no, he didn't, but I'll get into that a little later. But for now, let's talk about the next thing that's wrong with these movies, and that's the casting. Now, I should probably say this now, but in no way is any negative aspect of these movies the fault of the actors themselves. I happen to like some of the movies this cast was in, but we have to look at why this particular cast did not work for this movie at this particular time. Quite simply, these actors were way too old to be playing their parts. Now, yeah, I know there have been a handful of movies in the past where the actors in the movie were playing characters that weren't their age, but in this context, it's kind of important. Percy Jackson is a 5-volume series, and if they were planning on making the entire series into a movie franchise the way they did Harry Potter, it makes sense to cast actors that are the appropriate age. Rick Riordan himself said it best in a blog post he put up in November of 2018 when he was reminiscing on these movies. This series is grounded on the premise that Percy must progress from age 12 to age 16, and starting Percy at age 17 makes this undoable. This was proven even further after the fact in 2015 when Percy Jackson himself, Logan Lerman, said that he was concerned that he and his co-stars were growing too old for their parts. Anyways, now that we got the problem with the overall tone and cast out of the way, let's get into the actual story. Now the story opens up with Ned Stark. Wait, no, this is Zeus. It opens up with Zeus and Poseidon talking on top of the Empire State Building. Now, this opening scene is good because it establishes what the main conflict of the movie will be. Zeus's Master Bolt was stolen and Poseidon's child must return the stolen property by the summer solstice or there will be a war. Plus, some of the effects are pretty cool and they're pretty accurate to the books as the gods can take human form. Then, we're introduced to Percy and the other characters that are integral to the beginning of the story, like Grover, Miss Dodds, and Mr. Brunner. We get a glimpse at some of Percy's quirks, his home life, and we get to see the scene where Miss Dodds turns into a fury and attacks Percy. Now, altogether, this doesn't make for a bad opening act. It's missing some details from the book like Nancy Bobofit and Percy and his mom's trip to the beach, but all in all, so far, it's got the main points laid out. After that, we get the car ride to Camp Half-Blood, which is interrupted by the appearance of the Minotaur. So Percy ends up turning into a professional bullfighter, Percy's mom gets Thanos snapped, and Percy dies in Grover's arms. Now, up to this point, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this movie actually isn't that bad. Maybe little kid me had a reason to like this. But no, after this, the movie completely deviates from the source material. Percy wakes up and we're immediately introduced to Annabeth. Now, I know this might seem kind of nitpicky, but why does Annabeth have brown hair and blue eyes when in the books she's clearly described as having blonde hair and gray eyes? Anyways, but one thing real quick, when Percy wakes up, look at how he reacts to finding out his mom died.
No. All of it was real? My mom's gone? I'm sorry, Percy.
That's kind of a calm reaction. I'd be a lot more upset than that. Now, this next part is something that really bothers me. Percy and Grover meet Chiron, aka Mr. Brunner, aka James Bond for the first time, and while Grover runs to one of the cabins to flirt with the children of Aphrodite, don't ask, it's not at all what Grover's like in the books, but while Grover leaves, Chiron leads Percy to his cabin, the cabin for the children of Poseidon. Now, in the books, being a child of the big three, Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades, is recognized as a big deal. They are arguably the three most powerful gods, the three brothers, and they made a pact a long time ago saying that they would never have any more children because they were simply too powerful. In the books, Percy spends the first few days learning about his godly parentage, everyday life at camp, and gets to know some of the other campers, such as Annabeth, Luke, and Clarice. It all leads up to a big capture the flag match against Clarice where after Percy wins, he is claimed as Poseidon's son in front of the whole camp, and every camper kneels to Percy. However, in this movie, his godly parentage is just passed off as nothing when Percy just picks up this replica trident and says,
My father's Poseidon.
Is that it? We're acting like this just happens with every camper. Are we not going to acknowledge what a big deal this is right now? I mean, we still get to capture the flag match, but it's just nowhere near as significant because all it does is establish Percy as a good fighter. Also, he doesn't even take out Clarice in the Ares cabin. He takes out Annabeth purely for the purposes of sexual tension between the two. And it just keeps going. In the very next scene, we have another moment between them when Annabeth just flat out says,
I definitely have strong feelings for you. Just haven't decided if they're positive or negative yet.
I'm sorry. What? Didn't you just meet this boy who also just kicked your butt and embarrassed you in front of the whole camp earlier today? How do you have feelings for him already? This movie wants you to see this as the beginning of a possible romance between the two, but that's not at all how it is in the books. In the first book, these two are annoyed with each other more than anything else, but slowly but surely, throughout the course of a couple of years, they grow to care for one another and realize that they love each other. It's one of the best slow burns of a burgeoning romance, filled with jealousy and possible loss of the other. But in this movie, in their second conversation, Annabeth just admits that she loves him. So next we have Hades showing up, and I also really don't like this part because Hades just tells Percy that he has his mother and that if he wants to see her again, he will bring Hades the Master Bolt. See, because in the book, Percy actually goes to the underworld because he believes Hades stole the bolt and is planning on retrieving it to stop the war between Zeus and Poseidon, as well as possibly save his mother. This makes it so that we know Hades didn't steal the bolt, which in the book, up until Percy actually arrives in the underworld, Percy and the reader think that Hades is their best bet at being the thief. But that is still nowhere near as bad as what comes next. We see Percy, Grover, and Annabeth visiting Luke to prepare for their quest to the underworld, and Luke gives the trio a map which lays out the locations of these magical pearls that will get them out of the underworld when the time comes. and then the trio just spends the majority of their quest finding these pearls. This is not the Lightning Thief. In the book, Percy goes on this quest to find the Master Bolt and confront Hades in hopes of possibly bringing his mother back, and the pearls are literally just given to him all at once on the way. But anyways, first up on the list of places to go, we have Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium, aka the Lair of Medusa. So yeah, I could talk about how in the book it takes the combined efforts of Grover's flying using magical shoes, Annabeth's intelligence, and Percy's swordsmanship and bravery to beat Medusa. But in this, Annabeth just runs Medusa over with a pickup truck, and Percy decapitates her.
Heads up.
So anyways, our heroes find the first pearl and they make their way to the second pearl. Now, I can nitpick the rest of this middle act, but that would take way too long and it would be way too easy. Like, I can talk about how they completely ignore the scene at the St. Louis Arch where Percy battles the Echidna and her pet Chimera at the top of the arch and ends up plummeting 630 feet into the water below. I could talk about how they glaze over the scene where our heroes meet the Greek war god Ares and he tricks them into falling into a trap at a water park. I could talk about how they don't even mention our heroes bonding while stowing away in an inhumane zoo transport company van. I could talk about how the filmmakers decided to completely ignore all of that stuff for some more sexual tension between Percy and Annabeth and a fight that doesn't even happen in the book. But anyways, Percy and his friends battle the Hydra, freeze it with Medusa's head, and get the second pearl. So now we get to the location of the final pearl, and it's at this point that we realize just how much the movie has gone off the rails. See, the final pearl is in the Lotus Casino, and in the book, our heroes go in and use the place as a bit of a reprieve during their quest. They clean up, eat, have some fun, and it's a nice moment of levity in an otherwise brutalizing week of travel and near-death experiences. But our heroes are forced to leave when they find themselves losing track of time from all the fun they're having, and they come out to find that they only have one day left to complete the quest. It's a scene that raises the stakes exponentially, and it's an excellent commentary on the phrase "time flies when you're having fun." How you might find yourself wasting your life away and setting aside all your priorities because you're simply too distracted to care. But what happens in this movie? Our heroes go into the Lotus Casino, they eat these flour cookies, and they get drugged into no longer caring about their quest.
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way.
It might become apparent to you that this movie isn't even bothering to follow the narrative the book set anymore. I thought Christopher Columbus knew how to make kids' movies. I mean, how did we go from something cute and charming like this
Shut up, Harry.
to this?
Wow.
So yeah, our heroes get the last pearl and they fight the hotel staff and escape by crashing through the window in one of those cars you win in a contest. So finally, we get to the entrance to the underworld, and it's not in DOA recording studios like it is in the book. It's next to the Hollywood sign when Percy just reads this inscription and the earth erodes into revealing the entrance. So then our heroes go to Hades' place, and it's supposed to be the moment where Percy realizes he was tricked by Ares, and he finds that the backpack Ares gave him had the Master Bolt in it all along, and our heroes escape by quickly using the pearls. But in this, Hades' wife Persephone, who isn't even supposed to be in the story, just blasts Hades with the Master Bolt Percy had, and then helps our heroes escape as revenge for Hades being an abusive husband. What the hell is this? Sorry, I mean, what the underworld is this? By now, I don't even recognize this story anymore. This whole middle act, which is really the meat and potatoes of our adventure, is just so awful. I honestly can't believe this is really what they thought would pass as a Percy Jackson movie, because I feel like the only thing they've gotten right is that this story stars a character named Percy Jackson. So finally, we get to the last act of the story, where Percy is supposed to confront Ares, and they have this big battle on the beach, and after defeating him, Percy and his friends are forced to fly cross-country to New York, where Percy returns the Master Bolt to Zeus and stops the war. Now, this last act is good, because it wraps up the quest while simultaneously establishing the main antagonist for the rest of the series, Kronos, the Titan King. We find out Kronos was the mastermind behind the bolt's theft when he corrupts Luke into colluding with Ares and using the Master Bolt theft as a catalyst for a war between the gods, resulting in their destruction. We get to see Luke reveal his true colors to Percy at the very end.
I'm the lightning thief.
Before escaping to begin work for Kronos, because up until this point, Percy thinks Ares was the thief, but Luke reveals it was he who stole the bolt because gods can't take each other's weapons of power directly. It's a nice twist at the end that sets up the future installments of this series. But in this, the Pearls just take our hero straight to New York, where Percy drowns Luke, and then just murders him with a water trident. Fine. I don't care. So the movie's wrapping up and we see Percy return to Camp Half-Blood a hero, and he sees Annabeth and they lean in for a kiss because, oh, you're just so sexy. Oops, nope, we're not going to kiss because it didn't happen in the book, and that's the last thing we want to do is deviate away from what happens in the book and anger fans who have spent most of their childhoods reading and appreciating these books, hoping to one day get an adaptation that does their favorite childhood memories justice. 3 out of 10, I hate that there's a second one. Alright guys, I'll be honest, that first movie really took it out of me. And while I want to go into this next and final movie, I honestly don't know what I can say without feeling like I'm repeating what I did from the first movie. But honestly, there's not so much of a difference this time where it becomes hilarious like it did with the first one. And that's exactly one of the reasons why if I had to pick one of these movies over the other, I would say this one is marginally better, even if it's still not that good. I will say though that this movie again is slightly more accurate to the book. Its tone is also way lighter, both literally and metaphorically. Like, look at the color grading in the first movie compared to the second movie. It's leagues apart. Also, a lot of that edgy teen angst, language, and behavior isn't really prominent in this one.
You seen my dad on the highway to hell?
Yeah?
Kick his ass for me.
And that is exactly what I like to see. This makes the movie way cuter and funnier. See, this kind of writing is a bit more what I expect from Percy Jackson.
Nectar? You haven't had, you haven't lived, buddy. I've lived.
This all honestly kind of reminds me of the Amazing Spider-Man series as far as how different the first one was from the second, and we all saw how well that series turned out. This movie is also a bit more emotional. Like, I was feeling absolutely no sense of connection to anything I was watching in the first movie, and while I can't say I did for this movie, I can at least say that this movie tried to make you feel something. And probably the last thing that I liked were, again, the effects. And yeah, while I'm not an expert on discerning bad CGI from good CGI, I think I can say that even the CGI in the second movie is more colorful and lighthearted. Anyways, I suppose now we should get into the actual plot. So the movie opens up with everybody's favorite thing, narration from the protagonist.
7 years ago, 4 of these children were headed to Camp Half-Blood, the only place on Earth that is safe for our kind.
So yeah, we get some backstory and Percy explains how Talia, a daughter of Zeus, was attacked by monsters and sacrifices herself to save Annabeth, Luke, and Grover and allow them to get to the safety of Camp Half-Blood. Zeus turns Talia into a pine tree in death, which allows Talia to continue on serving as the source of Camp Half-Blood's protection. All fine so far, and it helps service this story's particular quest. And then we get the opening, and we finally meet Clarice, the leader of the Ares cabin, who we were supposed to meet in the last movie during the Capture the Flag match. And who is also strangely not as scary and brutish looking as I thought she would be, but she's actually kinda hot. Anyways, Clarice, who is supposed to be Percy's bully at camp, isn't really a bully in this, she's more so just a source of competition for Percy, kind of like how Annabeth was for Percy in the last movie. And yeah, Percy's popularity with the Lightning Thief quest has faded, Clarice shows up Percy, and Percy can't communicate with his dad like he could in the last story, so Percy's life is falling apart. But one thing real quick is that I really do like this line by Mr. D, of all people, at the beginning of the movie.
You know, the Christians have a guy who can do this trick in reverse.
That's it. I just thought it was pretty funny. Also, hey, I'm glad Annabeth finally figured out what color her hair is supposed to be. Now, I wish they could have done the book's plot and started during Percy's last day of school and we could have seen the fight with the last Dragonians, but it's not a huge deal because the stuff at the school isn't super important to the overall story. But one thing that is important at the beginning of the story is the introduction of Tyson, a Cyclops who, also through some weird family ties, is also Percy's half-brother. See, because in the story, Percy and Tyson's relationship is established before the book even begins, and it is revealed that they have been friends all school year. This is important because it helps show the strength of their relationship, but in the movie, they just have them randomly show up at camp, and we have no time to build a relationship between the two brothers. And you know what? I'll just say it now to get it all out of the way at once, but the characters and their relationships are not done well at all in these movies. I mentioned it a bit before, but Percy and Annabeth are not supposed to be in love, Grover is not a playboy, Clarice is not hot, Hades is not abusive, Persephone isn't even supposed to be here, and Tyson is supposed to act like a large baby because by Cyclops standards, he actually is one, but he acts like a normal teenager in this movie. These characters are just done all wrong. But whatever, next the camp is attacked by a Colchis bull, which is accurate, and I have to admit the fight is actually pretty cool, so I'll take it. But what I will not take is what comes next. Luke returns because who could have seen that coming, and reveals himself to have survived the fight with Percy because
Maybe next time you try to drown someone, well, first make sure he's not a demigod who can swim.
Swim? What the heck? You were impaled through the throat by a water trident. Not just impaled, but anchored to the bottom of a river. I mean, maybe the trident dissolves when it hits the river, but it was technically a solid before it hit the river, so that means that Luke should probably still be dead anyways because he was impaled through the throat. So whatever, Luke's back and it turns out he poisoned Talia's tree, leaving Camp Half-Blood vulnerable to more attacks. Now, this next part I actually like a lot because it's the part where Percy visits the Oracle, which we were also supposed to get in the last movie too, by the way. And honestly, I really like this scene, where the Oracle prophesizes that a child of the eldest gods will be the key to saving or destroying Olympus. It seriously reminds me of the Three Brothers scene from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, but here's the asterisk, this is not the right prophecy. This is the Great Prophecy, which is prophesizing the possible world's end, and because of that, it is mentioned during the last book. So Chiron, aka not Pierce Brosnan, informs Percy that he is the only living child of the eldest gods, and that the prophecy might be referring to him. So then we learn about the Golden Fleece, a magic blanket that can heal anything, including Talia's tree, and it's in the Sea of Monsters, aka the Bermuda Triangle. And Clarice is chosen to lead the quest because she showed up Percy. But Percy sneaks off to go on the quest anyways with Annabeth, Grover, and Tyson. So now we get to the quest, and it starts off with Percy and his friends sneaking out of camp in a magical taxi driven by the Grey Eye. And we get this scene.
Tempest split!
So they arrive in the city, we get this cute scene in the coffee shop I showed earlier, and Grover gets kidnapped by Luke's goons, and our heroes talk to Hermes, Luke's dad, about his son. Now, all that was supposed to happen earlier, but that's not really a big deal to me, because the director managed to use all these things in interesting ways to service the plot. He uses the magic taxi ride, albeit to a different destination, and he uses Grover's kidnapping as a reason for our heroes to find Luke, while the book starts off with Grover gone and our heroes going after Luke simply because that's what they said they were going to do after he betrayed Percy in the last book. Next comes the hippocampus ride to Luke's yacht, where Luke captures our heroes and they learn that Luke is planning on reviving Kronos, and they just barely manage to escape on a lifeboat. But one thing I have to say real quick is I hate how weak Luke is presented in these movies. See, Luke is supposed to be one of the best fighters at camp. They said something like he's one of the best swordsmen in years, and it's for that reason that he's able to easily defeat Percy in this story. But in this movie, Percy can just easily defeat Luke with a flick of his hand. Now, up to this point, honestly, I have to admit that this movie isn't doing its source material nearly as bad as the last movie did. It's sticking to the primary motivation for the quest. It's got a lot of the smaller things like the Colchis Bowl battle and the Grey Eye, and if it's not trying to fix the stuff from the last movie, it doesn't nearly have as much stuff missing that should be there as its predecessor did. But I'm only saying that now because after this point, it gets almost everything wrong. In the book, after escaping Luke's yacht, our heroes take shelter in a hideout Annabeth, Talia, and Luke built as children, and they get attacked by a Hydra, and Clarice reappears and saves them, and our heroes join Clarice's quest to the Sea of Monsters, where they find a monster named Charybdis. And hey, I'm glad they already decided to include the Hydra in the last movie and effectively ruin it for this movie. But it doesn't matter because this movie gets around all of that by having our heroes get eaten by Charybdis instead, where they find Clarice in Charybdis' stomach and they all escape by shooting a hole through its body.
You should watch what you eat.
Whatever, I don't care, I just want this to be over. So our heroes escape from Charybdis' stomach and resurface.
We did it! I did it! We did it!
I did it.
Now, in the book, after the whole ordeal with Charybdis, our heroes land on the island of the evil witch Circe, where Circe turns Percy into a guinea pig, which could have been so cute to see on the big screen, but in the movie, they don't land on Circe's island, they land in an amusement park named Circeland. Oh my god, guys, I don't know if I can make it. Now, this is where it really doesn't even match up anymore, and I'll try to explain it as best as I can. After Circe, we get to the Cyclops guarding the Golden Fleece, Polyphemus, and we actually see this cute scene where Grover dresses as a female Cyclops to convince Polyphemus not to eat him, and our heroes battle Polyphemus and escape with the fleece. In the book, Clarice brings the fleece back to camp while the others are captured by Luke, and Luke battles Percy before Percy is rescued by Chiron and a group of centaurs. Now, switching over to the movie, after our heroes escape with the fleece, Luke shoots Tyson in the chest with an arrow because that's how they translate the part in the book, where Clarice and Tyson are seemingly killed during the fight with Charybdis, and I really wish I cared at all about this non-existent relationship that was developed between Percy and Tyson.
No!
But whatever, Luke kills Tyson and brings our heroes to watch him resurrect Kronos, which he actually manages to do successfully. Tyson returns because the water healed him just like it does for Percy. Kronos eats Luke. I swear, this movie either has a thing with people being eaten or teasing Luke being killed. And Percy fulfills part of the Great Prophecy by slicing Kronos in half with the cursed blade. Even though in the book, it's a different blade that the Great Prophecy is referring to. But I am happy to report that they actually did get the ending right, where Clarice brings the fleece back to camp, fixes the tree, but the fleece overdoes it and brings Talia back to life, providing another possible demigod that the Great Prophecy is referring to. And oh boy, I can't wait to see what happens now that we got another child of the big three alive. Oh, thank God. 4 out of 10, a little better, but it still sucks. So guys, we finally made it. I have never felt more accomplished getting through these 2 movies and doing a video on them, but at the same time, I have also never felt more defeated. I didn't even have the energy to make fun of these movies anymore by the end, as you could probably tell. These movies get so many things wrong, and as a diehard Percy Jackson fan, that really upsets me. I mean, look, I get it. You can't put everything from a book into a movie. You can't really copy and paste. When I talk to Harry Potter fans, as much as they do like the movies because those movies are done very well, they also tell me that there's a lot of details from the book that are missing in the movie, which, again, I totally understand. 2 to 2.5 hours can only cover so much, right? But when you take those 2 hours and you start changing stuff so that our heroes aren't even going after what it says they're going after, and you put in scenes that never existed, that don't do anything for the plot, and you completely change the implications and events of certain scenes so that they drastically affect the long-term future of the series, then you start to seriously test my patience. But I think what I'm most excited about for this live-action Percy Jackson TV series is that Uncle Rick and Aunt Becky... Wait, hold on. Rick and Becky Riordan will be overseeing the whole process of making this TV series, and because it's a TV series and not a movie, we can have so much more time dedicated to the finer details of the book, thereby giving us a more faithful adaptation of our favorite childhood series. I also heard that it will be formatted so that 1 season is dedicated to 1 book, giving us 5 seasons in total, and honestly, that's just so perfect. I still feel a bit bad railing on these movies though because of the actors. I mean, when the news came out that we were going to get a TV series, I think even they knew the movies weren't done very well and made a lot of Percy Jackson fans mad. But it doesn't matter anymore because 10 years later, we finally have another start to a Percy Jackson adaptation. And if you ask me, I really think this has the potential to be the next Harry Potter, problematic authors not included. Finally, after starting these books back in 2009, I can say with confidence that we will be getting a faithful adaptation, because Rick and Becky will be overseeing this series, which means that nothing can go wrong now that... Well, it looks like we might have a damn problem. Hey guys, thanks for watching this little video I made. It was really fun making it, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is my first video, so feel free to leave any comments on what could be better, what you liked, or if you agree or disagree with me and think the Percy Jackson movies are cinematic masterpieces, leave that in the comments too. And of course, like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff if you want to, and hey, maybe even send this video to Rick Riordan. Maybe it'll make him laugh a bit at these movies since he hates them too. But other than that, I don't have much else to say. Thanks for watching, bye bye.